Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm just going to share my screen here. So we're here to talk about creating engaging social media content today. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect. Those of you who have been in a webinar with me before know that I'm very conversational. I like getting questions. I like getting comments and input. Feel free to unmute and speak up. Feel free to add comments in the chat as we go. I find it more fun when we're all talking, and I often find too that the comments people have are really insightful, and like there's nothing like hearing what your experience is like as well. So please don't be shy and feel free to join in. Heather, you're asking in the chat if this session will be sent out as a recording. Yes, it will. I believe Kate is going to take care of that when this is done. So don't worry, if you need to duck out early, then that's just fine. Yes, the recording and all of the slides as well will be available for everybody. So you don't have to worry about it, missing it or writing down notes. So I'm speaking to you today from Quebec, in a small town called Hudson. It's close to the border of Ottawa, and this is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, or the Mohawk. It's a place that has long served as the site of meeting and exchange among nations. So many people have passed through here and made their mark on this territory. So in the spirit of conversation and getting a sense of who you are as well, I thought we'd just start with a little bit of conversation about, where you're coming from in social media. Do you have a favorite social network? And are there certain kinds of things that you see for yourself that you find engaging on whatever your preferred network is? So I am going to pick on people and make you answer. I'm going to start with Natalie because you're first in my little queue here.
Okay. Sure. Favorite social network? It's love-hate, right? With social network.
Totally.
I try not to be on very much. It's a time sucker. Because of my age, Facebook tends to be where I go for information, but I have to say I enjoy Instagram more often. And I find myself kind of getting sucked into reels lately on Instagram.
Do you notice that you get a certain kind of reel, frequently through your feed?
Yeah, generally. I don't know how to stop that. That drives me kind of bananas. I'd like to see other things, but
Yeah, interesting. It's very much a part of the algorithm, and we are going to talk a little bit about the logic behind the algorithms, mostly to do with Facebook and Instagram because they are the two most popular networks. But all of the social networks these days, have some similar thinking in how they are, deciding what you get to see in your feed. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. Rich, how about you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm a Facebook person. Our organization though uses that and Instagram as well to get our messages out. What do I like? I really like videos that appear, short videos, and we don't get as many of those as I think we would benefit from. We do take photos and some short video clips at concerts. But then, of course, that's after the fact, so you're not advertising something coming up that way.
Yeah, makes sense. And Kate, I'm going to call you up. I know you're muted here as well, but I'm curious about your perspective as well. Do you have a favorite social network, and and what kinds of content do you notice that you pay more attention to on whatever your favorite platform is?
I'm like a casual checker-inner on Instagram. Mostly now to like pass time. I'll do TikTok. But I find like I try to curate my feed like pretty well so that I'm getting just stuff like targeted to me that I want to see. But that tends to be like honestly like family, friends, and a lot of like animal videos.
Yeah.
And cooking
dog training videos. Giselle, can you share what your preferred social platform is and what kind of content you tend to gravitate to?
Okay, sure. Hi. I'm a lot like Natalie. I think I'm mostly Facebook, but I enjoy Instagram. But I do find, because it's something Kate just said, and I wrote it down right away with a question mark. I do not know how to curate my feed. I don't know how to do that. So a lot of the things I see just meh. So on a personal level, I try to just sort of view things. But now on a work level with this organization, I feel like it is part of my job and I need to know how to do it better. And even when I worked in the world of education, there were things I felt I should do on social media, but I am so gun shy. I double, triple check every spelling, every word, my syntax, my grammar. Like, it's just so much work and it drives me kind of crazy. So the love hate is there. And yet I know that when I have an event and people say, "Oh, I didn't see that on social media," and I'm sort of thinking, well, I put it there. I just don't know how to find that happy medium. And that is a big reason why I'm so glad to be here today, because I think you're going to help me with that, aren't you?
That is very much what we're going to talk about today. And, and things like why, sometimes you might have put it on social media, but it doesn't appear in your followers' feeds. And, what can you do to try to up the odds on that? It's exactly kind of the purpose of today's webinar.
And I guess I had a question too about the third one that only Kate has mentioned so far, about TikTok and about like how that might work with us as an organization. I am not a TikTok user personally, but I wondered if that was going to be part of our conversation today as well.
Today, I haven't put as much information on TikTok in this platform or in this presentation. I can speak to it though. In previous presentations to, the Manitoba Arts Network groups, TikTok has been quite fringe, some interest in it, but I haven't really found that a lot of people are ready to jump into it yet. So I mainly focused on Facebook and Instagram for this one. One thing I can tell you about TikTok that I discovered in my experiments with it. I'm not a power user of TikTok at all, but I have, kicked tires a little bit with it. And my 14-year-old daughter is all over it, and she's always telling me about her experiences on TikTok. But one thing that was really surprising and kind of cool about it was that TikTok does not depend on you gathering followers in order to get views. Its algorithm doesn't put as much weight on that explicit, like, I follow you part that Instagram does, Facebook does, and many other social networks do. And so even though, like, I had just put some videos out to just test the platform, and I wasn't following anybody and nobody was following me, those videos still appeared in people's For You algorithm, and the more that people watched them, the more they got served up to people who were like them. And so I was quite surprised at how many views those videos got, given that I did nothing to promote it. Like, I didn't tell anybody about the channel, so I found it was a really different kind of scenario versus Instagram or Facebook. So it's kind of an encouraging thing too. Like TikTok, it's very much like live or die. Like, did you catch people's attention in that first 2 seconds in the video as they're scrolling down the For You page? And if you do, then you get a really good chance that your video will be shown to other people. If you don't, then it won't. So
yeah, you also have to be brave enough to make videos.
That's the thing, I think that's true really on all of the platforms. And it's interesting, like, although each of them have their own shadings with the algorithm, there's a lot of commonality too, and they're all learning from each other. So even though Facebook and Instagram began with this very, very strong element of I see the videos and content from my friends and the people I follow, they're starting to show you more like suggested content of stuff that they think you might like, even though you you've never seen, that person before, or that page. You have no idea where this is coming from, but they think you're gonna like it, so they put it in front of you and see if you bite. And that is, more like what happens with TikTok, where they just throw a bunch of it's spaghetti on the wall, basically, over there. Let's just see what sticks,
Okay.
and we'll give you more of that.
Okay. Okay.
But in terms of curating your feed, knowing that it's something to be aware of as you're scrolling. If you pause over something, that is one of the indicators that the social networks have that you're interested in it. So you'll see more of it. So if you stop to watch a video about dog training, you'll see suddenly more videos about dog training in your feed. And if you like it, if you click, if you take any action whatsoever, you'll increase the likelihood that you'll get more of that same kind of content. And there are also tools within Facebook, especially, but I think all of the social networks have some way to do it as well, where you can choose to stay connected but see either less of the content from that source in your feed, or to not see content from it but still stay connected. So that's especially for your friend group. Like, if you've got a friend that only posts their Wordle scores or something like this, and you're really not interested, but in real life they're super nice, and you don't want to be mean and like unfriend them, you can unfollow them, or just say, I don't want to see Wordle stuff.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
So like my mom, is that who we're talking about?
Maybe a little bit. Does anybody else, I can't see anybody's screens other than you guys. If anybody who is not currently sharing the screen wants to weigh in, please, unmute and jump in, and that goes throughout the presentation as well.
Also, Brianna, if I can just interrupt for a second, just in the chat, if everyone, if you're comfortable, if you could just let me know what organization you're with, or if you're just an affiliate artist member. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, and it's good for me as well. So today we're going to talk about social media engagement and why it's such a critical metric to pay attention to on your social media platforms, and when you're trying to look at your effectiveness on social media. It's a very important ingredient today. We're going to talk about what you can do to get better results in terms of getting more engagement from your audience, and how to make your social media presence more impactful. So we'll just kind of begin with this. Why does it even matter? I think when social media was new and people would say, pay attention to engagement, there was often a lot of people going, well, what does engagement do anyways, right? Like, what does a like mean? It means nothing. It's a meaningless metric. But because of the way that the platforms have changed and evolved, those metrics have actually become really, really important as to, how the social networks evaluate your profile and the quality of the content that you're putting out. That is one of the primary markers that they have for, is your content high quality content? Does it make people react in some way anyway? So that's, kind of the really important piece. But there's also some other softer stuff too. When you have a highly engaging social presence, the people that you're connected with feel nicer feelings towards you. They feel more trust. They feel more loyalty. They feel like it's a less transactional relationship. They like you. and that is a good thing for your long-term customer relationship. If you want people to be continually coming back to you, and if you want people to be recommending you to friends, if you want people to go beyond just buying tickets to a show, but actually like encouraging other people to buy tickets to your show and actively support you, social media is one of the tools that you have in your basket to help maintain those connections over time and help those good feelings keep going. It also is a great tool for getting some feedback and some insights into your audience. You can do this by asking questions explicitly and looking for opportunities to, engage and being responsive when they ask you questions, or encouraging people to send you messages. But you can also get insights as well just from watching, like, what do people react to? What kinds of questions do they post? When they share something, what do they say about it? And, noticing those things and mirroring them back to your audience. Are they saying that your theater is the most fun they've ever had? Are they saying that, it was a magical evening? You can take some of those words and some of those feelings and sentiments and then bring them back into your messaging and your marketing copy as well, so that it feels very real, and it really does reflect what people think and feel and say about your organization, your art, your venue. And fundamentally, it's what makes social media different and powerful versus advertising. It is the social in social media. And if you're not using that aspect of it, then you might as well just be putting up posters. You're not getting the full advantage of the platform if you're not paying attention to engagement. So, like I said, we're going to talk, specifically about the Meta platform, I think the most in this presentation, just because it's the one that is the most popular for most people. But there's a lot of commonality among all of the social networks. So when it comes to the Facebook algorithm, so, how Facebook decides what shows up in your feed, the three main ranking signals it's looking at are who posted it, because Facebook is about connecting family and friends, right? So they want to know, are you connected to the source? The type of content. So if you're the kind of person who watches a lot of short video, or if you're the kind of person who clicks on a lot of links, or if you're the kind of person that RSVPs interested in events, you're going to see more of those things in your feed than the kind of person who doesn't do those things. I am a bit of an outlier. I actually really love long form content online, and I really don't watch a lot of short videos. I'm like the only person on the planet who's like this. But Facebook knows this. And so I'm constantly getting these super long caption things, or links to other places, that are like little mini essays. And back before news content was banned in Canada, my feed was mostly links to the Globe and Mail, and other sources like this, because that's what I click on all the time, because I'm a big word nerd. For other people, it's cat videos, or or whatever it is that they like to look at and they like to do. So it also looks at the interactions with the post itself. So especially for things that it recommends to you that are not a part of like who you're connected to, it's looking at what is generally popular across the platform, and what are your friends interacting with, and then it'll make a guess that maybe you would like that too. So again, you can see all those three ranking signals are all engagement signals. It's who have you been talking to recently, and who have you connected with and engaged with? What kind of content do you click on or view or like or share? What are other people clicking on, viewing, liking, and sharing? And so each post has its own kind of ranking in the algorithm, but also the sources for the posts have their own rankings too. So if your page consistently is sharing content that a lot of people are interacting with, your page is more likely to win the lottery and have those posts you share appear organically in people's feeds. You guys probably already know that the vast majority of the people who follow you don't see your posts for your page. Like I forget what the number is, but it's vanishingly small unless you pay to promote the posts. Just because they follow you does not mean that they get it. And part of that is just a capacity issue. There's now so much content on Facebook. People follow so many friends and so many pages and so many groups. They can't possibly see all of that content and read it. It would be completely overwhelming. They would never get to it. So the algorithm is Facebook and all of the other social networks, way of trying to be helpful to filter through that fire hose of content and give to you what it thinks you're going to like best. And the Instagram algorithm, I just included there as kind of a counterpoint. And it's, as you can see, it's very similar. It's like the popularity of the post, how frequently the user has interacted with the account in the past, how many similar posts the user has liked, and the user's engagement with the account's other content. So, you know, things like if they messaged you before, if you've been having like a private conversation, that tells Instagram that they're more closely connected to you than if they've never messaged you before, if they've left a comment on your post, if they've hearted something you've shared, if they've watched one of your reels. Any of those things tells Instagram that they are interested in what you're sharing. So to improve engagement, you know, it's kind of like, it's simple, but it's not simple. You know, engaging with your audience is a big piece of it. People don't like to feel like you're just talking at them. It's like, imagine that you are at a party and you meet somebody new and they never let you get a word in edgewise, or you start trying to talk about yourself and like introduce who you are, and they're off talking to somebody else over here, telling them all about who they are next, you know? People like to feel like they matter. And they like to feel like you're listening. And so when you can signal in your page that, you know, you do pay attention to the comments, you notice when they engage, you're looking for engagement, you'll get more of it back. So part of that, some of the like practical things you can do is to, you know, tag other, say artists or other pages if relevant to your post. You know, if the venue maybe where your organization is holding an event or is a partner, or if it's the location there, try and collaborate with that page, you know, so that you can benefit from each other's audiences. Actually liking and responding to comments, again, when appropriate. You know, inviting people who liked a post to join your page is another little thing you can do. Facebook makes that easy as well. And sharing content from other sources can be also an indicator that you're not just, you know, talking about yourself all the time. You're a part of an ecosystem. So that can be from partners, that could be, you know, from maybe artists who are being featured in your venue. It could be sharing a testimonial somebody else wrote, and, you know, an audience member maybe wrote on maybe Google Maps about your venue. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that too. It just shows that you're paying attention and shows that you're listening. Making it easy for your audience to engage with you too. You know, I think sometimes we ask a little too much. Like if we're asking for engagement, we might ask them something kind of complicated or something personal. And if that's the very first time that you're asking a question to your audience, it's just a little too much too soon. You know, if you don't have a pattern of engaging with your audience and they don't already feel a really close and, you know, real connection with your organization on social media, starting with some really super simple stuff that people can do in 2 seconds without thinking too hard, that's fun, is a really good place to begin that. So whether that is like, do you like this or do you like that? Which is better? You know, or what's your favorite snack, you know, when you come out to this kind of event? Or, you know, tell me a memory about your first concert. You know, something that people like to share, kind of like at the beginning of our call where we all wanted to talk about our dogs. You know, people love to talk about their pets. And while talking about pets might not always be the right thing for your organization on social media, figuring out like what is the conversation starter that you have that would make sense with the kind of organization you are and the kind of audience that you have. And then the third element is showing that you actually understand who you're speaking to. So there's a few things you can do, again, like kind of on a more tactical and aware basis. One is to mirror their language. So I mentioned a little bit about that before. Like if you listen to how people talk about you and what it is that they love about what you do, and try and show that back to them. Show that you value what they value. Look for opportunities to you know, indicate that like you've noticed when they've maybe, I don't know, shared a testimonial, shared a photo, you know, other things that they might be doing online to promote your venue. Like notice it and say thank you. And this last one may or may not apply depending on the kind of organization you are, but sometimes, you know, you might know that your audience really wants something and maybe you can help them get there. And so making that a part of what you're doing and bringing that into the language of the messaging in your social posts is another way you can show that you get them. So as an example, like let's say you're having art classes for adults. You could just talk about the classes and what the classes do, or you could frame that in a way that is about what the deeper meaning is for the people who want those classes. So for example, some adults are looking for classes because they're lonely and they want to make new friends, right? So maybe you frame it as come out and meet some fun people and pick up some new skills. Maybe they're feeling a little intimidated and they haven't, reconnected with their artistic side in a very long time. But they would really love the opportunity to do that and to feel safe, that they, to be able to come into that space and remember what it's like, to draw and paint, or to sing, or to play an instrument, or whatever the thing is that they want to do. You can speak to those desires in a subtle way within the way that you talk about these events, so that it's not just about the transaction of like sign up for these classes. It's, we know you want this and we're going to help you get there. Any questions so far? I know I've been talking for a little while. Okay. I guess feel free to jump.
Yeah, I was I guess for us, and like you're familiar with the organization, like I find that when we're getting like the people that we interact with in our audience are kind of static. Like I feel like our followers are the people that are following us, and especially because we're member based, it's artists or organizations that follow us, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I guess like my question is like, should our focus be on growing that? And if so, would like a poll or a, like audience engagement and stuff? Because I find that like people do engage with us and they do ask questions and comments and stuff. Like the audience that we have is engaged.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if we should like also focus on like gaining new audience members, and that's something that I've been struggling with.
The answer is not one answer for any organization. It really does depend on your goals. And I've always believed that, the number of followers you have is much less important than the quality of followers. And, you also have to think about the size of the pool you serve as well, right? And also how they prefer to receive information. So, it does happen sometimes that maybe the platform you prefer to use is, let's say, Facebook, but the way that people would prefer to receive information might be different. Maybe they would prefer to be on Instagram. Maybe they would prefer, an email newsletter or a listserv. It depends on the audience. So I think, that question about whether you put your attention on growing the page or on, focusing on engagement and kind of getting more activity on the page. To a certain degree, having a more active page with more engagement from your followers should result in more organic growth, partly because of the way that Facebook and many other social networks are structured, where people see what their friends are doing on the platform. So they might see that, Kate liked this post, or Kate left a comment on that post. And, and if the people that are following you have networks of similar people who follow them, then they can follow the breadcrumbs to you. But that said, if your focus is mainly on follower growth, there are other tactics that you might want to prioritize as well, including making sure that you have a strong call to action to follow whatever your page is that you're trying to grow. When you have in-person events, in your newsletters, in other platforms, maybe having some kind of an incentive to join the page, maybe retooling the content a little bit so that it's got something that's really unmissable for people. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I find that I'm kind of trying to split our engagement between things that we're offering, I'm trying to do probably like 60%, where it's like, okay, here's a submission for artists. Here's something you can apply to. So it's, giving the audience something.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, the rest is like 20% like fun and like, oh, here's our staff doing something. And then 20% where we're like asking for something, where it's like, hey, could you share this? Or hey, like it's Christmas, could you donate to this?
I would say for an organization like Manitoba Arts Network, one of the content streams that I would look into is having a stream that is explicitly looking for success stories from your members and celebrating your members, but telling that story in a way that helps other people see what they could do too. Um, you know, so that, that might be that there was a particularly successful event and maybe somebody tried a new way of promoting it and that turned out really well. Maybe somebody is trying a new tool, to manage ticketing and it's been awesome and they'd recommend it. Maybe it's just like a spotlight, here's our member of the month and this is what they do and, why they're so great. People like to see, I guess like to have heroes or like to have, examples of, of good stuff. And it also makes people feel really good to be noticed when they are doing something right.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
This actually ties right into the slide that I advanced to a little too hastily. Meta's advice on like what is engaging really boiled down to understanding the audiences you want to reach and figuring out what's meaningful to them, because engagement is so individual. As far as Meta is concerned, they're looking for stuff that is meaningful, interesting, informative, new, something that is fresh. And what that is for each person's audience is going to be quite different. And so this was some more from their advice, and I put the link as well on these slides if anybody wants to nerd out and read the full text. But so in terms of like what is meaningful, the way that Facebook thinks about it is the personal signals, like how close you are to the person or publisher of the page, and they determine that by your pattern of communication or engagement with that person or page. Their guess about what you would like to talk to your family and friends about. So things that you like to share or that they think you would be motivated to share, as well as the things you spend, stories you read, the videos you watch, all of those things. And then of course the engagement for posts. Like we kind of talked about a bit earlier, what that is for me is different than what that is for you. And so the challenge for each of you as an organization is to reflect on who is my audience anyway, and what do they want, and try and gather some information or some data points to help make a more informed guess on what that might be, because that might make a difference to you when you're deciding, for example, am I going to tell this story in an image? Am I going to tell it in a blog post? Am I going to tell it in a podcast? Am I going to tell it in a short video? How am I going to communicate this information? It depends on how your audience wants to hear it. And likewise, that informative kind of element that Facebook is looking for in terms of like what engaging content is, that can be really different from one person to another too. Like I said, I get a lot of dog training videos. I also get a lot of recipe ideas, because that's the stuff that I get interested in. I get a lot of history posts, especially a lot of social history and feminist women's history. And I bet that that's different than what many of you see in your feeds. Some people get a ton of celebrity news. Some people, like I have one friend who gets a ton of those like dash cam and cell phone videos of like police doing bad things, because that's what he watches. He's always like, "Oh, that's so horrible." I don't see any of that. None of that shows up in my feed. So it's interesting. And, and Facebook included this thing that they're always working to better understand what is informative to each person so that those stories appear higher up in their feed. So again, that's part of that training the algorithm comment earlier. The algorithm actually wants to be trained. Facebook loves it when you say, I don't want to see Wordle posts. And they're like, oh, okay. We don't have to show that to you then. And they love it when you do physically like a post or comment or share, because that's a really clear indication of some kind of level of engagement. Oops, sorry. So the big idea, though, that I really want everybody to come home with is that engagement is a product of connection. And so really, like, what fuels it is a sense of empathy for your audience. You're looking for the things that motivate you and motivate them. What do you have in common there? What are the values you share? What lights you up that also lights them up? What do we offer that they need? Or what do we offer that they really value or desire? How do we help them get to be the people they want to be? For example, in a cultural context, there is an element sometimes of, I want to be the kind of person that goes to the opera. I want that. I want to go and I want to not feel intimidated. If you've never been, but you like the idea of being the kind of person who goes. But sometimes I think just doing something different that's out of the ordinary can be intimidating for people too. So sometimes it's like helping to lead a pathway and says, for those of you who already want to do this, this is how you get there. Here's the reminders, let's make it easy. Let's make it less intimidating, all of that. Playing how they play. So knowing what's fun for your audience. And again, for some people, this is going to be different than others.
Hello there. Hi, how are you?
Some audiences will love it if you
We'd
have
like
a
to
fun.
purchase some tickets for the play
Right.
Friday night.
Yeah.
Somebody is being loud. Are you able to see who that is, Kate? Okay, there we go. They're muted.
Friday.
Yeah, no worries. So thinking about what's fun for
Yeah.
them. For some
Okay.
people it's
Two tickets, yeah.
I think it's Flin Flon Arts Council. Are you
How
able
do you
to
know?
mute them?
It's free.
So sales is going quite well for it?
Yeah.
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 Should be quite the play, eh? Well,
I don't
anything
have
will
the
grab me all, eh?
admin,
Yeah. Cash, cut, cash, good.
Yes, cash. please.
Will be better because the card will be more expensive.
Yeah, yeah.
If you hear why you have to pay more. Okay, you know, not a new customer. Yes, I think we have your.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Kate, are you able to mute?
Larry?
them?
L
Larr, yeah.
A
Oh, you're
RR.
muted, Kate.
R. Oh, sorry. R R
Y.
Y. Larry. Y.
Yeah, and then last name is
Maybe you hear.
Great
Um,
question.
yeah.
Oh,
Rudy Klansky name,
okay,
huh?
make me an admin.
wow.
Yeah.
How it's pronounced?
Okay, there we go.
Sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Yeah, it takes a while to figure that out. Yeah, no worries. And sorry about that, everybody. So basically just learning to tune into your audience and seeing where you have points in common, where you can have fun together, where you can get to know them better, and using that to fuel the kind of content that you choose to publish and how you choose to explain things or tell stories about what you do. So another part of that, we talked a little bit earlier about, how boring it is when you go to a party and you get stuck with somebody who won't stop talking about themselves. The same effect happens in social media. So kind of the reverse of what is engaging, this is what's not engaging, is to be too much about yourself and not enough about other people. So these were some stats from a survey of audiences and kind of what has a negative impact on brands you follow. So being too focused on self-promotion, publishing low quality content, not engaging with the public, or the comments that people leave on your page or direct messages that people send you, being really slow to respond as well, being hard to find on social platforms, not not posting frequently enough, all of those things. And more than half of consumers said that the most memorable thing a brand can do is respond. Like if you think about like they're not asking you to, write the great American novel. They just want you to talk to them like they're people and pay attention, notice. So again, back to the theme that is all through this thing, that it's all about thinking about who's on the other end as an actual person that you actually want to get to know. And not surprisingly, artificial intelligence generated stuff, the AI generated content can also be a turnoff for the same reasons. I saw one quote that somebody shared on social about it. If no one could be bothered to write it, why should I read it? And I was like, good point. So this was a poll about people's perceptions of AI, and as you can see, like it's different by generation. Gen Z is much more open and willing to accept AI generated content, but even they are not super keen on it versus older generations, which tend to be very opposed to it. So if I know something that is generated by an AI application, I think I'd be less likely to engage with it. If I know that it was written by an AI application, I'd be less likely to trust it. People feeling uncertain about whether or not what they're seeing is real, if they know that AI is involved in content creation. And there's this emerging element too of like, well, what is real, what is fake in terms of the content that people share. One thing I'm seeing more and more is news organizations, for this reason, developing AI policies that make very explicit whether or not journalists are permitted to use AI in their work. And if they are, exactly how is that permitted? Is it allowed as a source for content? Generally in a news context, not. Is it allowed to write the article? Generally in a news context, not, but we might see more of that coming up in the future. But they might say that AI is used for outlining or for brainstorming or for other purposes as well. And so that's one approach that some organizations are taking with it. And I think the other thing that we're starting to see as we see more AI generated content is that it gets boring, it gets repetitive. The robots don't have a point of view. They're not interesting. They don't have a story that they can share of what happened to them and why it mattered. And so one thing that's going to be happening in the future, as more and more AI content starts to clutter up social media feeds and search engine results, the algorithms are going to get smarter at noticing it and filtering it out too. And so these were some predictions about, what might change in terms of the kinds of storytelling techniques that might become more popular as a result, as kind of the backlash for AI. So, having proof of authentic expert opinions, sharing firsthand experiences, having something that is unvarnished so that it can't be, because it doesn't have that glossy look of the fake AI generated images or the gloss that you see with that kind of fake content that comes out all the time. Like when you can tell that it's a little rough around the edges, it feels more real, and that is more valuable to people. And that's going to factor in as well into SEO. I know Google is working on trying to find signals to kind of sift through content as well to indicate experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, and not just, keywords in the text. And because of that, so these quotes were from the article as well, that, knowing what the source is, who the source is going to become more important over time. And for anybody who is interested in developing an AI policy for your organization, if AI is a part of what you're doing, it is a smart idea to have one because there can be a lot of very important pitfalls if you're using AI without taking care. So, this was some good advice for Hootsuite that was in there. AI is great for brainstorming. It's great as an assistant to organize your thoughts or to get feedback on grammar and spelling, for example. It's great at brainstorming 20 variations on a caption or on a headline so that you can, kind of see if you can come up with a better version than the one that you came up with. So things like that, it's a super useful tool. Writing the content itself, less useful, a lot more prone to error. If you're using AI a lot in your organization, or if you feel like you would be, it's a good idea to take a minute and just think about the bigger implications. Think about whether there's any security issues with what you're feeding to, the AI when you're asking it to write things. Are you sharing anything that might be more, I guess, confidential, or that maybe, you shouldn't really be sharing with AI. Finding out if there are some legal concerns about, the content that you're using, because sometimes the content that the AI will spit back is coming from other sources, and you don't know if it's just been copied and pasted from it, or if, so it might come up in a plagiarism check, for example. What parameters are you going to put around the use of AI in your organization? What feels right to you, and what fits within the framework that you're in? How strict that is depends on the kind of organization you are and the kind of content that you're sharing. I just wanted to put it out there as kind of a part of the context of content creation, because I know a lot of organizations are using AI more and more. And the AI style guide is another piece for it as well, to make sure that if you are using AI to help generate things like captions for Instagram or something like that, the tone of voice and the approach for it is consistent for your brand. We're going to move away from AI. So again, with the back to kind of our big picture, what are we trying to do with this engagement thing? We're trying to create a virtuous circle. So by sharing content that makes our audience feel seen and understood, the audience responds in some way. They like, they comment, they share, they watch, they read, they click, they do something. Then you respond to them. You like or respond to their comments. You might thank them for sharing. You might read something they say and then turn that into an idea for a new post. You might even say, so and so asked, where can we park? And so I made this map for you. Here's where you can park. So there's ways that you can do that too, where you can keep it really personal and relevant, and just show that you're tuned in and that you're really paying attention. Sharing relevant content from others is also a part of that conversation, and all of that helps your audience feel seen and understood, which then perpetuates this virtuous circle of engagement. That's what you're aiming for. So you're looking to give your audience what they want. We talked a lot about that. Tailoring content for specific audiences. This is something that I find sometimes can lead people in the wrong direction. They are trying to write for everybody, and as a result, they end up writing for nobody. It's a funny thing, but the more specific you can be in terms of like imagining who you're talking to, the more it resonates. And when you speak from a personal experience as well, I like this show because that lands with people more than if you try and make it really broad and less specific. We're going to talk a little bit about the platforms that people use as well. And so limiting your content duplication and trying to repurpose and customize it at least a little bit, at least sometimes, for social networks is a part of that, to show that you're really there. You're not just, spamming out to all the platforms. I'm realizing that our time is going along, so I'm going to speed up a little bit here. So some of the things you can do to kind of help stay organized on this front is to define content pillars. So those are thinking about 3 to 5 topics that you're going to revisit regularly, so that your content has some structure and some predictability in it. People know what they're going to get from you. keeping track of your analytics to see what do people actually click on or respond to, and trying to like pay attention and use that when you are doing your next round of content planning. To see, what is it that is engaging for your audience. Looking at trends as well. Even like, I always like it when you can blend a bit of what you see on social media with what you actually hear in person. Like if you're at an opening night, for example, as people are walking out of the theater after the show, what are they saying about it? And filing some of those things away, some keywords, some descriptors, and so on, so that you can bring that energy out in in your content when you're talking about the show. And using FAQs, the questions you get all the time, other people have too, and people like that as well. There's a tool called empathy mapping that might be useful in some contexts when you're trying to get into the head of your target audience. It's basically just sitting down and writing out, what do they say, think, feel, and do around whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. And if you can get specific about that, then you can then brainstorm from those things that that your audience is thinking, feeling, saying, and doing, so that your content can be more specific to them. Like, is their pain point, I don't know where to park? Is it that I want to go somewhere after the show and I don't know where that is? Is it that I'm not confident in that I'm going to like the music for this artist? And then what can you do to address those things, those questions, those concerns? Some of these are some more tips from Facebook. One thing I thought that was a really interesting takeaway was that they recommended that publishers not worry too much about posting frequently, partly because the algorithm does such a good job of filtering out content that is less relevant. And so they will also filter content that is posted too frequently as well. So because not all of your posts are going to show in people's feeds, you don't need to worry too much about it. I wouldn't recommend posting, 30 times in an hour, but most people are not at that level of extreme. Post when you feel like you need to post, and the algorithm is going to do its work to decide what it's going to show to people. And the main thing is, like, would somebody share this with their friends? Like, when you're publishing something to social media, what would make somebody want to tell another person about it? And if you can answer that question, you'll get a little closer to creating it in a more engaging way. I think it's also important to remember why people are using social media. When you're publishing stuff from your page, you're interrupting their experience on social media when it comes through their feeds. And if what you're sharing brings people closer to their other reasons for using social media, it's more likely that people are going to feel like it belongs, and it's going to be more natural for them to engage with your content. So, most people, it's keeping in touch with friends and family, but there's also a really strong element of just entertainment, looking for things to do, feeling like they're in touch with the world. They're afraid of missing out. It's funny, avoiding fear of missing out, was down there at 18% for one, like, as a primary reason for why people are using social media platforms. So keeping that in mind as well, like, their primary purpose isn't just to learn about your organization. They're there for other reasons too. And sometimes what you have to say factors into that. I'm going to just skip over that. Oh, no, okay, that's right. The average person uses more than 6 social media sites. I remember why I threw this in here. It was really just to underscore that, when you're duplicating content across platforms, be aware that you might be showing it to the same audience over and over again. So if you can find a way to make it a little bit fresh, at least sometimes, then it validates the reason to follow you on both Instagram and Facebook, for example, instead of just choosing one. The report, though, that I pulled those stats from had an interesting finding, which was that, there really is no benefit to trying to be everywhere. They recommended instead focusing on fewer platforms and engaging fully on those platforms. Because most people are on multiple social media sites, if you're on one of the big ones, typically Facebook or Instagram would be like, the 2 biggest in Canada, then you're very likely to be reaching your demographic, or to be where they would expect you to be. And so you don't have to, break your head trying to be on all the new emerging social platforms unless you want to be there. So, and I would say that that's true of TikTok. If it makes you feel excited to create short form videos and you want to have kind of the license to play around with the platform, absolutely go for it. Do you have to start a TikTok account? No, you don't. You can stick to Instagram and Facebook if that's where your audience is and that's where you're comfortable. That might change in future. Maybe TikTok is going to eat all of them, but for now, that's where it is. And this is the overview of the relative popularity of the platforms in Canada. So YouTube shows up, partly because it comes up in search all the time for people. And I don't think any of this would be a surprise about the level of popularity. The one that maybe stands out is TikTok because it's newer and it's already, at a point where it's almost as popular as Instagram. And, it's more popular than Twitter, which has been around a lot longer. X. The favorite social media platforms for people in terms of like the ones they spend the most time with right now, Facebook is still dominant in Canada. Instagram is second, and then we go down the list. For some reason, they included things like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp in this list, which I don't love because I don't think of them the same way. But it's an interesting data point anyway. And although we started talking about, that what is engaging is very individual for each person, there are some truisms about like what is generally engaging. And as even was true in the beginning of the conversation that started this webinar, for most people, short form video is the most engaging type of content. That really does dominate. While it is useful to have a mix of different kinds of content in your social media feed because people do have different preferences. If you're going to focus on developing capacity in one kind of content creation, it would be short form video. The good news is that these days, like an engaging short form video does not have to be complicated. In fact, it should not be complicated. It can be 15 seconds. It doesn't even have to be a minute long these days to be able to get attention. And having some of that in the mix in your feed will help to increase the overall engagement levels with your page, which should help to lift up some of those other posts as well so that they get seen, because you will have a stronger pattern of interaction, with posts from your page. Kate, I know we're coming close to time here. Do you want me to wrap it up here and we can take some questions, or do you want to go a little longer?
I think it might be beneficial while we have people live to do questions, and then we can put the slides online afterwards. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm totally comfortable with that. There's a lot to say and share about all these things, but it's the questions that I think that are the most interesting. Rich.
If we're being very specific about what we put on our feeds, we're trying to attract younger people, and by and large, they're not on Facebook. Should we have actually different posts that would be going on Instagram or on Facebook to try to attract younger people on Instagram?
Possibly. So what I found, in the pages that I have managed, there's a very high tolerance on Facebook for content that was created for Instagram, and versus the other way around. So I think like if Instagram is important to your organization, and if you're trying to produce more Instagram content and get more traction on that platform, at least a good portion of those posts will go very well on Facebook. And Meta actually encourages sharing from Instagram to Facebook too. so that's what I would suggest is think Instagram first and then decide when you share to Instagram whether it would make sense to also share to Facebook. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And then there's going to be other kinds of content that makes sense to share to Facebook that won't work on Instagram. Like if you've got links to something, or more of like text oriented stuff. Yeah, that kind of thing. But like reels, for example, or pretty photographs, those things go perfectly well on both platforms.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts, observations? Anything that you thought was off base or doesn't reflect what you've seen?
I do have a question. Sorry about that. I also was trying to sell a couple more tickets for this weekend event.
Good for you.
Yeah, and when they come to the door, you can't turn them away. Just like
Absolutely.
this idea of responding to everything that people interact with you on. So that I know is going to be a takeaway for me. I'm going to ask the most basic question.
Mhm.
Everyone's been telling me to tag people and hashtag and all that. But okay, so on Instagram, you do that with the symbol hashtag, right? But do you do that on Facebook too? I know this is a very old person question. So, but do you have to use the symbol or do you just put names in there?
So on Facebook, you use the @ symbol and then type their name. Sometimes I find the platform can be buggy, and sometimes it doesn't work as intended. And I have not been able to really figure it out. Sometimes it works if you go to the page itself and you see what their URL, like their Facebook page URL is. And
Okay.
if you use the @ symbol and then put that text in, sometimes it'll turn into the link that you want it to turn into. But it has happened to me before where it just wouldn't work.
Okay.
And if that
And
happens, it
sometimes
just happens. It's
when you
Facebook.
put the @ sometimes their name will come up if you put the
Yes.
first two letters or something. Okay.
Yes.
So it's got to have the @ on Facebook, but the little symbol on Instagram.
Yeah, so on Instagram you can there's like a little button that you can click to like tag people in the
Oh yeah.
photograph.
Okay.
There is also a way that you can mark people as, I think it's called collaborators on Instagram. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since I've done it.
Okay.
And that would be if they're not actually in the photograph, but it's like a shared like experience. So when it's marked that way, so in the tag, it pings the page and says, somebody tagged you in the photograph. Do you want to add it to your feed? When they're marked as a collaborator, then they have the option to display it on their feed as like a native part of their feed as well. So it shows in both places. It's kind of like being a co-host on a Facebook event, versus being tagged in a post about an event.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The platform is always changing, and and even like the best practices change a lot. So it's, you can't assume that anything is a silly question. Even the question of like, do hashtags make sense on Facebook? It depends who you're asking. And and to a certain degree, it kind of depends who your audience is. Like some audiences understand what hashtags are and how to use them, and might be actually searching for certain hashtags on Facebook. Others don't. Like I know I personally, I don't use hashtags on Facebook at all, like as a user of Facebook. It's not relevant to my experience on Facebook at all. But I know other people do use it and they do find it relevant. And I've seen very conflicting advice on that, from kind of expert sources. So, my feeling on that is, your audience, and if you feel like it would be relevant to your audience, you can try it out. And if you feel like that's not the right thing, then don't do it.
Some people use hashtags on Facebook to make a comment rather than to link to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot too, where people will use it as like for emphasis. Sometimes, I think like where what it's intended for is more to group posts about a topic, and in some cases to make it easier to search for content that is linked to the same thing. Do users actually use it in that way, especially on Facebook? Not so much. I think people who came from other platforms, like on Twitter, hashtags were really important for grouping together conversations. And so if your audience has a history of, you know, being like power users of Twitter, then they might see hashtags as something that's really relevant and they'll recognize what that means. Other people really won't.
To that point, I'm finding like the Meta Business Suite a lot more restrictive than it was previously. So I find like, you know, although I feel as though you should get like more reach with a reel, but then it's like restrictive with how many people you can reach with it, really, like if you're not paying for the ad. So I'm wondering best practices for like unpaid promotion with the business suite.
Yeah, so I think partly because of the volume of content and partly because they're business and they're you know they're trying to make some money off of it. You know, the exposure for like the organic promotion of posts has been shrinking every year. You know, it's now very, very tiny. The algorithm does not seem to discriminate against engagements that happened as a result of promoting a post, however. So what I know a lot of organizations do is they will look at which posts, like which of the organic posts are getting the most engagement, and then they will boost those. And the reason is that then it boosts the overall levels of engagement for the page if you do that on a consistent basis, which makes it more likely that your organic posts will be seen over time. So that's one strategy that you can use. I think, like, you know, your instinct might be to boost the post that needs help, but if your goal is, you know, that longer term, like improve the strength of the page, you want to try and get as like maximize the exposure of the best performing posts. The other thing that I've seen people do is use platforms that are that have different kinds of algorithms like Twitter or TikTok to test messaging. So on Twitter and on TikTok, you know, the algorithms have a different kind of formula. You're not penalized for publishing too often. There's a little more fluidity for it, and there's more of a like, if people are responding to it, then it gets seen more often, and you know, so you can kind of flood those platforms with content, for lack of a better word. So I know that there's one particular digital marketer that has just made that his formula. He uses Twitter as his test bed and just like, you know, puts any idea he has out on Twitter, just like constantly. And then whichever ones get traction, those ones he then takes and makes video content, like reels for Instagram and content for Facebook, and invests in build and like writes blog posts and does other things because he knows people are interested in them. So that's you know, something that you can think about too. Within the ads platform, there's also the possibility for A/B testing messaging. So if it's something like that, you know, you need to communicate and you know you need to promote, like let's say you have tickets for a show, right? And instead of just putting one message out there and seeing what happens, if you have some budget, any budget, even if it's a low dollar amount, let's say you've got $100 that you're going to put into promoting this show. You can create an ad on Facebook that has several variations in messaging. It could have different kinds of photos. It could have a different headline, you know, and then Facebook will test them all and it'll pick the winner and then use that as the main one. So that's another thing you could try to see like what resonates more with people. I've been surprised in the past when I've done those tests. Like I remember there was one ad that I created that I was testing different imagery to see what was going to work, and it was actually like the worst picture, like from a photo quality perspective, that had the best results because it felt very real. It was like, you know, a happy crowd shot kind of thing, you know, versus stuff that was, I thought, were prettier to look at. But I guess it was less interesting for people. I think that's one thing that I'm always surprised with like when you look at the statistics and you look at the results for different posts, you know, on social media. It isn't always straightforward. Like sometimes you can spend a ton of effort and time crafting the perfect thing, and it's like crickets. And then you know, you just post a photo that, you know, you took right then and did nothing to it, and it blows up. You're like, it was just the right time and the right moment. I think there is a certain element of getting comfortable with just testing things and with not being perfect all the time. You know, like I think you have to have a really strong sense of what is on brand for your organization, and you know, and what kind of boundaries you have about how you talk and what you say and all of those things. But within that box, I think it's really beneficial to play a little bit and just see what happens. And you might be surprised. A lot of people find that the most engaging videos are just those like selfie, like I'm just talking to my camera, you know, and it's just, hey guys, guess what? Like I'm behind the scenes and we are building the set for this show. And look, here it is. I'm so excited. I hope you are too. Come out and see it. And like a little video like that is tossed off, that's, you know, a few seconds long, might actually do better than if you spent hours and hours editing together a beautiful polished trailer. But you won't know until you test it. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
I wanted to thank you so much for this, Brianna. And I'm just letting everyone know that anyone that put their email in there, I will give you a link once we've got it up on YouTube. So probably tomorrow.
Very good. I do have a resource as well that is linked in the presentation, and you can explore it if you would like to. It is a template for social media audit. So it basically gives you a structured way to go look over your social channels and just reflect on some of these questions. You know, like what is it that you're trying to do in there? Does what you see reflect what you're trying for? You know, sometimes it's really easy because we don't look at our own profiles a lot of the time, right? We look and we post stuff to it, but when was the last time you actually looked and at your bio description, or you know, verified that you know, the photo on your event, on your cover page, for example, you know, when was that last updated? So it sometimes is useful to just go through and systematically just go, what does it look like on Facebook? What does it look like on Instagram? Do those two pages look like they belong to the same organization? Sometimes they don't, right? Because you'll have like a volunteer that was running it for a while and then it kind of got forgotten about, you know, or one person was doing it and the other person was doing it. Or like I said, you just didn't look at it in a while. And it happens to all of us. It's nothing to feel bad about. But periodically, it's good to just go through and evaluate it. And a piece of it is, you know, what has been the most like top performing content, and what can I learn from that? You know, does it match my intention for being on the platform, or maybe do I need to do some things different as well? So that link is at the end of the PowerPoint as well, so you guys will get that, and you can feel free to make a copy and modify as you want. It's just one suggestion for things that you can look at if you're interested in taking a bit of a closer look at your organization's social media presence.
That sort of reminds me about something we're battling with, that I'm sure a lot of people are with volunteer groups, is I want to say dead sites, things that we're not using anymore. Or, I mean, how detrimental is that for us to leave them where they are?
My personal opinion on it is that when it comes to, like, a lot of organizations have dead Twitter pages, for example. It was a platform that a lot of people were on like 10 years ago or more, and have since abandoned completely. They're not getting engagement there. Your audience is not there, you know, not worth your time. And I think that's a good call, actually, is to say, you know what, we're not publishing there anymore. My opinion, though, is that you don't want to let go of the handle because things do change in social media worlds. And it's also possible that some other organization could take it over and there could be confusion, with your followers and all of those things. So what I would do is update the most recent post on that profile and your bio to make it clear that you're not updating that page anymore and where people can find you. And that way, if somebody is looking for you on Twitter, they will at least see that and they will know that you made the decision. This is not a live channel anymore. They're not going to be fooled into following you and then getting nothing. And if you ever decide that, you know what, Twitter's a thing again, you've got your channel that has, your organization's name, you haven't lost that. Yeah, and I would say if you find that you have been spread very thin with a lot of channels that you really can't support, it would be better to just make the decision not to do it rather than have it be like a zombie channel. That's the other thing I see a lot of, is especially with Twitter, but I've seen it with other ones too, where it's like all it is